Okay, well, hello. In case you don't know, my name is Austin, and welcome back to the next lesson for the intermediate classes for SEDA College Online. Thank you all so much for coming to watch today. I hope you're well, and I hope you're ready for a good lesson. I have something a little different for you today. If you have been watching with me each day, you know I really like grammar. For me, that's my favorite thing. I mean, I studied linguistics at university, so I like grammar. I like looking at rules and structures and how they work and what they mean. Um, but of course, grammar is not everything. There are many, many more parts to language and to conversation and to the different things you need, the different skills and vocabulary and ideas you need to successfully communicate. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's lesson. We're not going to talk about grammar, we're going to talk about conversation. And I'm going to try to help give you some phrases you can use to really help improve your conversation in English. So we've got a couple categories to talk about. We're going to talk about phrases for expressing preferences, um, phrases for giving reasons, phrases for agreeing, and phrases for disagreeing. So all of these kind of work together when you're trying to make plans, you're talking to someone about ideas or thoughts, and you're sharing what you like, what you don't like, what you believe. If you agree with an idea, if you disagree with an idea, all of those ideas about exchanging opinion. And so I'm going to give you the phrases that are some of the most common ones that are used by, British and American English speakers. These are phrases that they will commonly use when disagreeing or when, expressing their ideas. And I'm going to also, ooh, sorry, I thought there was another. I'm going to also talk a lot about politeness in this lesson because politeness is a very important aspect in all of this. So, politeness. Um, I call it a language concept because actually politeness is a very interesting um, idea, and it's one of the kind of fundamental properties of language, and it's a measurable quality. Scientists and linguists actually study politeness as a kind of a function of almost all human language because language and culture and society are all mixed together. And so language is social, so things like relationship are important. And we try to show relationship and show respect or understanding for relationship through politeness. And we use it as a tool. When you use politeness correctly, someone thinks that you respect them. They believe that you value them. And then we use politeness in the other way to be rude, to show them that we don't respect them or we don't like them. And so the use of politeness or lack of use of politeness all work together to kind of express our opinion of a person. And so when you're talking about opinions like expressing ideas or agreeing or disagreeing, politeness is very important. And languages show politeness in many different ways. And there are different actual structures and formulas that languages will use to show politeness. And that's why sometimes it does not translate very well. Um, what is polite in one context, in one language, in one country, can be considered incredibly rude in another context, in another language. And you can't always translate one word for one word and have the same feeling in a sentence. And so that's why it's so important to talk about politeness in context. When do we use it and in what context? And so I'm going to try and talk about English politeness. How do we do it and in what context do we do these things? So the big thing is that in English, our system is we add words. So that's how we handle politeness. Other languages have special words they use. Other languages have special suffixes they add to words. In English, we actually just make the sentence longer. Um, I don't know. I can guess at some weird philosophical reason why. Maybe we think more words is more effort is more respect. I don't know. But for whatever the reason is, this is our system. So, for example, here's a rude sentence, an order: make me coffee. Um, I'm going to talk about politeness in the context that you might work in a work, maybe a work environment, um, some place that is not necessarily your family or your friends, because relationship is important for politeness and context is important. So all of these things that we talk about in this lesson are kind of having an idea of a more a situation where you want to be polite, you want to be more respectful. So in a work environment, it's probably rude to turn to a coworker and say, "Hey, make me a cup of coffee." um, to an English speaker, that would be very rude. So to make it a little more polite, we can add please. That's the standard politeness word in English. Please and thank you. Make me a cup of coffee, please. It's a little more polite. It's still very rude because please is not really the politeness thing we do. Of course, it is more polite to say please, but it's not the real way. So how about another example? So that was a little less rude, but we can make it better. So this is actually a polite way to do it. Can you make me coffee, please? And so now we've made it a question. That's one way English shows politeness. We'll use questions. We won't say statements or commands. We'll make it a question. And we make it longer. We start using modal verbs. Can you? And then, of course, we still need please, of course. So this is actually a polite thing to do. This would be a polite sentence, a standard thing you could say to a friend or a coworker. Can you make me a cup of coffee, please? And that would be all right. But it's even better. We can make it more polite still. How about this one? Would you please make me a cup of coffee if you're going into the kitchen? There we go. That is probably the most polite thing I can imagine about making coffee. And you can see how much longer this sentence is. The meaning is exactly the same as this three-word rude sentence. Make me coffee. It's the same idea, the same desire, but to make it polite, English has added all of these words. We've made it a question. We've added modal verbs. We've added please. We've added a conditional context to it. So we're really making it as complicated and as big as possible to make it as polite as possible. So this, maybe you think this is cool, maybe you hate this about English, but this is how we show politeness. And so all of these phrases that I'm going to show you about agreeing and disagreeing and giving opinions and giving reasons are all going to be with this idea. They're going to be polite phrases. So they're going to be bigger things, things that you can use in work context or with friends where you need to be polite and you want to be respectful. The other important thing is a vocabulary focus here on the word would. Would is kind of our other politeness word. So, I said please and thank you. But when you want to be polite, English speakers will use would and could very often, those two modal verbs, and specifically would. And it has many usages. We've talked a lot about them. We talked about it for past habits. We talked about would a lot for conditional sentences. And this is where it kind of connects to politeness, because we are expressing when you are expressing an opinion in a polite way in English, you are expressing an imagined idea, something that you're thinking about as kind of a hypothetical. And so that's why we begin to use would, because it's our modal verb for imaginary and hypothetical things. So for example, I would love visiting the mountains this summer. The kind of short version of this is I want to visit the mountains. But we consider that a little direct, a little too direct, a little rude. So we use would to make it more hypothetical, imaginary. Oh, if possible, if any way, I would love to visit the mountains this summer. And so that's how we're using would to make this a little more polite. Or it would be very stressful to travel by airplane. The meaning is, I don't want to travel by airplane. But again, that's too direct, that's too rude. So we make it a hypothetical. Well, If we did travel by airplane, it would be very rude or very stressful. Um, so we're using would here in this kind of conditional hypothetical way. And so that's what all of these sentences are doing. They're using politeness and they're using would to make things a little hypothetical and to put some distance to make it less about, I want or I need, um, to be more polite. So let's start with the phrases. Oh, sorry, there was another example. Sorry. You would hate it there. We need a new idea. This is the same thing. All right. So the phrases. The first thing to consider is that using would is it's just more polite. So, that's kind of as I was talking before, it's for those hypothetical conditional reasons, it's more polite, but like fundamentally, if you want to be polite in English, remember would and could and please and you'll do very well. So, some expressions for preferences. So, I would rather. This is a common expression we use to talk about something you like more than a current idea. So in this situation, I would say, I would rather do this. So we are talking about this idea, we have this idea, and I say, no, I would rather do this thing in a different subject. So that's how we use that. I would prefer. This one's just to talk about what you like, I would prefer, I would like, they're synonyms, and it's literally just that. It's a polite way to say I want. Another one, if it were up to me, I would. So in this example, we're using a conditional structure. And this is, as you saw in my politeness example, would you make me a cup of coffee, please, if you're going into the kitchen? Of course, in that example, I know the person is going to the kitchen. I see them. That's why I ask. I see you go to the kitchen. Hey, if you're going to the kitchen, would you make me a cup of coffee? Um, so we're kind of doing the same thing in this example. If it were up to me, I know it is not up to me. There are many people who will be responsible for this decision and who will participate in this decision. But if it were me alone, I would do this, meaning it's just my opinion. That's it. I'm just saying my opinion. I want this, or I think this is the correct thing. So we often will use conditionals this way to be more polite. Or something I would love or something I would hate. Um, this is an abbreviated expression. I'll show some examples for all of these on the next slide. But we'll use this structure to talk about your feelings towards a thing or a location somewhere I would love or hate. And then finally, let's say you don't have an opinion. Well, you can say that too. I don't have any strong feelings either way. Or you might hear, I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. Both are kind of equivalent. They're just synonyms, the same expression. And this one is just when it's a polite way to say, I don't care. I don't have any strong feeling one way or the other, meaning I don't have a strong feeling towards this, I don't have a strong feeling towards this. They're both equal, so I don't care. So we can see that for all of these phrases, these are all polite phrases to say your preferences, to say I want or I don't want, or I like, I don't like. And in all of them, the reason they're polite is because we're using this would verb to kind of put distance away from me. So it's not really about I don't like this, I like that. It's well, I would rather do this compared to that. I would prefer this, or if it were up to me, I would like to do this instead of that. So we're using these bigger sentences, these more complex sentences to make it less personal. Because to an English speaker, when something is hypothetical, something is a little distant, it's just more polite. All right, so let's look at examples for all of these. So for the first one, I would rather go to the cafe than the bar. This is a common way to use rather. And so you're saying, I would rather go to this cafe than a bar. So maybe someone said, hey, why don't we go to a bar tonight and chat? You would say, I would rather go to a cafe. Or I'd prefer to go out tonight. So this is just a nice way to say, what you like. You could say, I want to go out tonight. That's good. But maybe you're talking to your friends and they're saying, well, some of you are, maybe we go to a restaurant or I want to stay home. And you say, well, I'd prefer to go out. Or if it were up to me, I'd stay home and not go out at all. So this is that polite way to say, if I had control, I would do this. So you can always use it this way. And it's this set phrase. If it were up to me, meaning if I had control, and then you can do whatever you want. I would do this. I would do that. I would stay at home. I would go out. I would go to a restaurant. I would, jump in out of a car. I don't know. But that's the remember the set phrase. If it were up to me, just meaning if I had control. Another example. It sounds like something I would love. So this is a common way to use this something I would love or hate expression. It sounds like or it looks like, meaning this is my opinion towards this. It sounds like something I would love. I like this. It sounds like something I would hate. I don't like this. And I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. I've heard good things about both places. A very common sentence here. I've heard good things. Um, just meaning, I don't care. People tell me both are good. So there are a couple phrases from here I'd like to talk about, like it sounds like, I've heard, that looks like. We'll often use these verbs about senses, it sounds like, or I've heard, or it looks like, uh, to describe that you are interested in this or you have ideas about this, but you are just not certain. You're not confident. So it sounds like something I would like. Well, then that means I think, yes, I believe that I would like this. I don't know. I don't have experience, but maybe I would. I think I would like it. All right. So, how about for giving reasons? So now you've said all your preferences, and maybe you want to say why you believe this. Well, again, politeness is involved here. So when we give reasons in a kind of polite English way, you'll often do it by talking about what the other person wants. So you don't just say, I think this because I like it, or because I want it, or because it is my favorite. You'll try to give reasons for it by saying, well, it's good for you too. It's good for you because of this. So let's look at some phrases. It would be more or less. This is a structure to compare ideas now. So you've got your two ideas here, and you don't want to say, I want this because I want it. You want to say, I would like to do this because it would be more or less whatever compared to the other. Or you would be able to. This is an example of this politeness here. So I'm telling the other person what they can or what they could do if we did my desire, my choice. You would be able to do this if we continued. And so this is a way to kind of explain the benefits of an idea, how it helps the other person. Another, you could probably. So this is similar to the one before, and now you're just giving possible actions. You're just saying, oh, if we do this, you could probably do this there too. So I would get to do my thing, you could do your thing. Or I like the idea of, and then we have a gerund here. So the idea of the action is now a gerund in this context, and then because of your reason. So this is now to say why an idea is appealing, why you like it. And then we use whereas a lot when we're giving reasons. So this is a conjunction to show opposite outcomes. So I can say one idea does this, whereas this idea does this. And depending on your opinion and depending on your idea, you can use it to give support to either side. So let's look at some examples for these. So, for example, it would be less stressful if we took a train. So, imagine you're talking with a friend about traveling, and they say, well, do you want to fly or do you want to take a train? And you say, well, I think I would prefer, or I would rather take the train. It would be less stressful than the airplane, or it would be less stressful if we took a train. So now you're using that it would be structure for comparison. It would be more or less, whatever, to compare the options. Or you would be able to relax all day on the beach. So, oh, come on, let's go to the beach. Oh, no, I think I want to go to the mountains. Oh, no, come on, you would be able to relax all day on the beach. I know you want to go to the beach. So now I'm using this, you would be able to, as a way to kind of bring the person along to show them, this is a benefit of this idea come along. Or you could probably go diving if we went there, talking about the beach. I don't want to go to the mountains. Well, let's go, come on. If we go to the beach, you could relax all day, and hey, you could probably go diving if we went there. So now just giving extra examples of possibilities. When you use this phrase, you are not very positive. You are not sure. Maybe you can go diving, maybe not. So that's why you say could probably as a way to show that I'm not positive. I think this is possible. Or I like the idea of renting a hotel because we won't need to do laundry. So here we've got that I like the idea of gerund because. So what action do you like? Well, I like the idea. I want to rent a hotel, so I want it in this structure. I make a gerund. I like the idea of renting a hotel. And then I can just use the conjunction because to show why. Because we won't need to do laundry. They make the beds, they wash the pillows, so I don't have to do it. Um, and so just make sure this is kind of aesthetics praise. I like the idea of, and then you want a gerund. I like the idea of running or sleeping, renting, whatever. But you just need a gerund in that position. All right. And how about this? You'd be forced to sleep on the floor, whereas a hotel would have a bed for everyone. So here's that conjunction in action. So here I have kind of the negative of their idea. I want to rent a hotel because that's my opinion. And so I say, well, I like the idea of renting because you won't need a laundry. And then, well, if we don't rent a hotel and we go to we stay at my grandmother's house, you would be forced to sleep on the floor, whereas a hotel you would have a bed for everyone. So you can see I'm using whereas to connect those ideas. This one's bad, whereas this one's the opposite. So it's a common way to use whereas. And what's important, I just want to show these kind of phrases here. So the first here is you would be forced. To be forced into something just means you have no choice. You have no control, no choice. So if we stayed at my grandmother's house, she has one bed. Sorry, you'd be forced to sleep on the floor, no choice. Another common expression you might see when talking about giving reasons is to be stuck. When something is stuck, it cannot move. That's the literal meaning. So, maybe a car is stuck in the dirt. It cannot move, so it goes, and then it's stuck. It can't move. And so we use it as a metaphor, meaning you can't change this situation. So, for example, I can change this sentence. You would be forced to sleep on the floor. Can be. You would be stuck sleeping on the floor. Notice after stuck we have a gerund. That's one difference. You would be stuck sleeping on the floor because my grandma only has one bed. So just know you can see either of these are very similar ideas. They're for negative things. They're both negative. To be forced to do something or to be stuck doing something. Just know the grammar difference. After stuck, we have a gerund, ing, and after forced, it is not. It's the infinitive, forced to sleep. All right. So we've given, we've set our expressions for preferences, and we've said all of our giving reasons. Now let's talk about some polite ways to agree or disagree. And there are a little less for these, so we'll go a little more quickly. So one thing to note for politeness. In English, I'm sure you know, we say sorry a lot. We say it when we don't mean it. Well, in English, we often and almost expect the other person to say sorry when we disagree. Even though it's no problem, we are two independent adult people. I can have my opinion, you can have your opinion, and that's okay. and it's nobody's fault. But usually, if I disagree with you, I will say sorry. If you disagree with me, you will say sorry. Just as a politeness thing, we think it is polite to kind of show there's friction, there's problem. So I say sorry to make it a little less bad. So just know in the disagree phrases, you'll see sorries and apologies. So one way to agree 100% is just to say, exactly or absolutely or I agree completely. So maybe you say, you turn to your friend and you say, I want to sleep at a hotel. I would prefer to sleep at a hotel because we don't have to do our laundry. And your friend says, exactly, we should rent a hotel, or absolutely, we should rent a hotel. So this is just kind of an expressional thing, just to say, yes, I 100% agree. But what if you agree a little less, not 100%? Well, you can say, well, that's partly true, or I kind of agree. And so these are expressions to agree, but not 100%. So they can say, I want to stay in a hotel, or I would prefer to stay in a hotel because we don't have to do my laundry. Your friend says, well, that's partly true. They would do the bed, but we still have our clothes. We have to do that no matter a hotel or my grandma's house. So you can use this one to say you agree, but not all the way. Another one is I suppose. So we use these, I suppose, or I suppose so, or I guess so, if you say so. This is a way to agree, but not really agree. These are polite things to say when you're talking to someone and you do not agree, but you don't want to argue, you don't want to fight, so you say, all right, I suppose, okay, I guess, or if you say so, and we can continue. The other person, okay, whatever, I agree with you, let's be done. These are common polite phrases for that. Um, and now for the disagree. So let's say that you want to disagree politely. You really cannot accept this. So then you say, I'm not so sure about that. Or I'm afraid I don't agree. So here we see our first apology. I'm afraid is a very common way to begin apologizing in English. So we use it here. I'm afraid that I don't agree, or I'm not so sure about that, meaning I'm not confident in that sentence, that statement. So, you could say, uh, you could relax all day. Let's go to the beach. And you say, I'm not so sure about that. If I stay on the beach all day, I will turn red. I burn. So I don't want that. And so you can disagree politely. Or what if you want to disagree more strongly? You cannot accept this. No. Well, then we actually will often apologize. So we'll begin with I'm sorry, even though, no problem, no fault. Um, but in English, it's just expected. You will begin with I'm sorry, but I really don't agree, or I don't think that's true. It depends on the situation, if it's a fact or an opinion. I don't think that's true is a fact. I don't agree is an opinion. But what's important here is that we will begin with I'm sorry, to kind of show that this is a strong disagreement, this is a strong difference because I'm using I'm sorry. So these are just some common ways to agree or to disagree politely in English. So you can use all of these together. We're using the preferences expressions, I would rather, I would prefer, and then the reasons why, you would be able to, or you could possibly, or if we did that, we could do this. All of those kind of giving reasons expression. And then you can also connect them to this agreeing and disagreeing, to say exactly or absolutely that's right, or I suppose, I guess so, fine, whatever, or I'm sorry, but I do not agree with that. So they all work together if you're talking to coworkers and things. And so, the final thing I want to say is that this politeness, all of these things I have said about politeness are in a more formal context. I am giving you phrases that you can use at work, you can use with strangers, you can use with people you know, but not very well. Of course, you can use these with things you have very close relationships to, like mothers and fathers and best friends and things. That's kind of personal. Um, but the things I say about politeness, about what is expected and what English speakers do, that I'm talking about a context where things are a little more formal. Okay. Oh, and then some examples of these. Um, exactly. I agree completely. I kind of agree, but I still think the beach is a good idea. So that's your way of kind of to not agree totally. Um, I suppose that will be okay. This is a way to say I agree, but not really. I suppose that'll be okay. I don't like it, but oh, whatever. Um, I'm not sure about that. We can't assume the coach or the bus will have Wi-Fi, so this is your way to say I don't think that's a fact, to disagree politely. And then finally, I'm sorry, but I really don't think that's true. There's no way we'll get there in time for the train. And this is a very strong disagreement. Maybe you're planning a business trip. There's a couple more phrases here, such as up to a point. This is a common phrase to show that there's something's true, to a limit. Um, someone could say, "Oh, a train is so much faster. We should take the train." And you say, "A train is, or an airplane. An airplane is so much faster." You say, "An airplane is faster up to a point, but if you add the airport time, it's slower." So that's your way of showing that up to a limit something is true, and then it changes past this limit. And then often we'll say might to show possibility here. Um, it's another modal verb used politely. With would, we'll use might. That might be the case. That might be true as a way to show possibility, kinda, sorta. All right. Well, thank you all for watching. This is all the politeness and the phrases I wanted to share with you today. This was a very conversation-focused lesson, and the four categories we talked about were expressing preferences, giving reasons, agreeing, and disagreeing. So that's really all that we talked about, and we talked a lot about politeness. And then at the end there, I talked a bit about how politeness is based on context, in your relationship to someone. So, I'm not 100% true. It's a lot to do with your context and your situation. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching this today. I hope these phrases are helpful. I hope maybe in your next work meeting, your next work negotiation, you will be able to use these. Or maybe, hey, the next time you see someone in a grocery store, you can use this to be more polite. So I hope you have a good afternoon, and thank you so much. I hope to see you again. Bye bye.